So there's many different types of weapons that you could always use to defend your home against violence and criminals. However, as a very basic rule of thumb for this course here, I want to talk to you all about a semi-automatic shotgun. Now, here we have something called the Beretta Ultima A300 Patrol. What this just means is that's the manufacturer and the actual model of the gun itself. However, there's a couple of key things that I want to talk about when it comes to semi-automatic shotguns. First and foremost is this right here on the front, the light and this pressure pad. So, a pressure pad allows us the ability to get positive identification of somebody in our home as a threat, and we're not going to walk around with this on. We'll talk more about that later in the actual tactics piece. But this attachment with a light on the front of your gun, absolutely necessary. Absolutely necessary if you're going to defend your home, in my opinion. Now, the other thing I want to talk to you all about is this charging handle right here. This is what we're going to use to ultimately load a slug or a shell into the chamber. The chamber is where, when we pull the trigger, that bullet is actually going to fire and get sent down towards whatever threat happens to be in our home. The other thing I want to talk to you about is this right here, the trigger. So this is the trigger guard, and this right here is the trigger. Remember those weapon safety rules. Our finger is going to stay up and off that trigger until we are actually aimed in and ready to fire. And we're not aimed in ready to fire until we have positive confirmation of our target. Notice how these weapon safety rules are quickly falling into place when it comes to properly defending your home. You're always going to need to use those weapon safety rules. Now, here on this shotgun, we have the rear sight and the front sight. Now, what you would normally do is you would hold up that rear sight so that the front sight, which is just this single tip, would rest right in the middle. That's how you know that you're on target. However, when it comes to home defense, a recommendation I could make would be to get a red dot sight mounted on the front here so you don't need to line those sights up, or because of the close quarters engagement with defending your home, if you just line that front sight tip on the target, keep both eyes open, get that positive identification, you're most likely going to end up hitting them, especially with the type of ammunition that we're going to be using, which we'll discuss here in a little bit. But this is just a couple of key fundamentals and characteristics of a semi-automatic shotgun. Now, this isn't a breakdown, a class on how to properly use a shotgun or all the different components to a shotgun or the nomenclature. So be sure to reach out so we can actually go over the specifics of the gun that you have. Read the book and the manual that you purchased, YouTube some other videos, but ultimately reach out to me, because that's the benefit of being a member of Lethal U, is that you have direct access to a special operations Marine who will break this stuff down for you specifically so that you feel completely comfortable with the nomenclature and the mechanics and the pieces of your specific weapon system. However, I do recommend semi-automatic shotguns because once you pull that trigger the first time, all you have to do is continue to pull the trigger and you will continue to engage multiple adversaries, multiple threats, or even the same threat multiple times in order to effectively neutralize them. So, this right here is a semi-automatic shotgun with a pressure pad light mounted on the front of it. I highly recommend that you get the same style weapon system. The manufacturer, the make, or the model doesn't really matter that much as long as you're not selling yourself short and getting some cheap piece of crap from, Uzbekistan or something. So be sure to take it seriously, get a decent weapon, just like you want a decent fire detector for your home or a decent fire extinguisher in case there's a fire. You want to have a good weapon system to defend your home against a criminal threat.